Welcome everyone to our first live Q&A session about the potty training. Today we're going to talk about potty training, and actually we at MyBee Bear we decided to do it a tradition. Every single month we would love to offer you as moms some help, because we definitely know how overwhelming and how stressful it can be. So every single month we will meet with a potty training consultant to guide you guys through process and provide this help. I wanted always to create this community before, but I always was constrained by financial side. But now that you as a customer, you're supporting my brand, I can finally put it in place. And today we welcome Tabata Pool. She is international potty training consultant. She potty trained kids throughout the globe, starting from Australia to UK and now in the United States.
Absolutely.
How many kids?
I should go back and count. I can tell you at the moment I'm working with probably about 150 children and families, some of which are in Australia, some of which are in the US, dotted all around the US, and some of these kids are in the UK and some other exotic places too.
I can only imagine. I potty trained too, and I already thought it was one of the hardest things. So maybe we can start with the basic questions.
Yeah.
When you want to start potty training, where do you start?
Absolutely. This is one of the most often questions that I get from parents who are thinking about it or haven't even started thinking about it yet, but they really want to find out, when should I be starting? And that's a little bit of a how long is a piece of string question, of course. There's some really good evidence out there around different timings and different developmental windows. So we generally find that children around the age of 18 months, they've got the skills to be able to really start on that journey. But a lot of families choose to start that journey a lot earlier. So baby pottying is a thing, and it's something, elimination communication is something I'm so interested in and learning a lot more about. So a lot of families are choosing to start that journey a lot earlier. I would say that when we think about potty learning and getting ready for life, getting ready for school, we really want to start a good way before we think about starting school, especially if potty training is a prerequisite for the school that you're going in. I get a lot of calls, really panicked parents saying, my child's going to school in 3 weeks and we just haven't got this potty training thing down. And whilst I've worked with some kids that pick this skill up so quickly, for the vast majority of kids, it's going to take a little bit longer than a couple of weeks to be completely accident-free. They might get the concept quite quickly, but like any new skill, like walking, like feeding, like riding a bike, we expect to have some stumbles, we expect to fall off our bike occasionally until we've really got that skill down. So I like to say the earlier the better. And even if you're not doing full-blown potty training, you can always get started with some just potty awareness or potty learning activities, even around like diaper change times. You could sit your child on a little potty whilst you're getting things ready, even if they're quite young. My prerequisite for working with kids is they've just got to have head control. They just have to be able to hold their heads up themselves. I don't want to be responsible for that. But the majority of kids that I see are around about 2 and older. But I really advocate for parents to get started earlier.
No, I understand that. And it's true that there are more and more advocacy for early start of the potty training, because apparently that's what, I'm not an expert. You are much more expert in that than me. But I heard that the sooner you start in, the easier it is, and then less problem is created for the kids in the aftermath.
Absolutely. It makes sense, right? If kids have been exposed to something really early, then they're more likely to feel comfortable with that and feel like it's just part of their daily routine. Eventually, what we want kids to learn is that picking yourself up and going to the toilet to do your wheeze and poos is just part of your day. It's not something that's necessarily super special or not something that we have to bribe you into. It's just a part of your everyday, like, putting on your socks or brushing your teeth, all these sort of things.
Oh, brushing your teeth and putting socks is a skill that needs to be learned as well.
Yes, yeah.
We underestimate sometimes the power of those struggles.
Absolutely. We want that to happen, right? We want brushing teeth to just be part of the routine. We want all these things. And so the earlier we get started at building those routines, generally the easier it is. There is a little bit of evidence to say that the longer you leave potty training to a certain point, so children up to the age of 3 will learn potty training quicker the older they are. But we really have to be careful to capture that developmental window. So whilst a child that's nearly 3 might be able to learn this skill quicker than a child that's, say, 12 or 18 months, then what we're going to find is that if we don't capture that developmental window, now your 3-year-old might be thinking, actually, I've got a diaper on, I've got a toilet strapped to my butt, essentially. That's a lot easier than having to stop what I'm doing, stop playing, get out of the playground and go to this weird little room. Whilst sometimes it can be a little bit of a shorter process, I think it's a bit of a bigger risk to leave it a little bit later for most kids.
It's funny that you're saying, because not so long ago I talked with someone and the person told me that her child was ready and she missed the window because the school told her not to start potty training. They told her, oh, after 3 it's better. And now the girl, she doesn't want to ditch the diapers anymore. She's so comfortable, she doesn't want to wear underwear at all. Regarding the early potty training, I got one of the questions. I'm going to read it to you. So one of the moms sent to me a private message, and this is what she asks. I was wondering, what age do we start potty training? Because I have 17-month-old and I was told to wait until 2 or 3-year-old. So it pertains to what we are saying regarding the early start. But how you would explain to a 16 or 17-month-old the concept of the potty? Where do you start where kids are so young?
Yeah, where do we start with kids that young for any of their skills? How are kids learning all of their skills? How are they learning to talk? How are they learning to walk? We model these things for them a lot. And I don't know a mum that hasn't been to the bathroom with their child at least 50 times.
Show me this person.
Yeah, exactly. They don't exist. So just by having a child be exposed to other family members going to the toilet, talking about the toilet, trying to keep toilet talk positive, try to avoid things like talking about poo being really stinky or disgusting or yuck. I think it's really tough, right? Because poo's emotive. If you got poo on you, you're not a happy camper. But I think keeping things really positive, lots of modeling, and we can even do modeling with like toys. Let's sit Teddy on the toilet and get a little water gun, spray some water in there. Let's sit a doll on a potty and empty out some water in the potty, and now she's done a wee, yay. All of these things, children learn through play and they learn through watching us. So make it fun and engaging. And then kids are going to want to be drawn into that rather than us telling them you have to do this. That's never a fun way for a child to learn a new skill. So we want to keep it fun and engaging, especially when they're so young. So they have positive early experiences. And again, through routine. If that child starts doing maybe 1 or 2 little potty sits or toilet sits per day, maybe around bath time, they're already undressed, nice time, you do a little story or a little activity while they're there, then it's just going to roll on and become part of their normal everyday routine.
It's true. I've also saw this hack. I never tried it with my kids myself, but I saw this hack where you put the bassinet with warm water when they're on the potty, is that apparently it helps releasing the liquid.
Absolutely. I've actually had one of the little girls that I worked with, she would always pee in the bath. Always. Every time she got in the bath, she would pee. So what we'd do is we'd fill the bath up with just a tiny little bit of water, and then we would put the potty in there. And so she'd put her feet in, sit down on the potty, do the wee, then we could whisk the wee out, put it in the toilet. Mum doesn't have to empty the bath anymore. Yeah. And she started to develop that association between actually doing a wee and sitting on the potty, and that was really powerful for her
instead of doing it in the bathroom directly.
Exactly. So she wasn't, usually she would do a pee into the bath and then mum would have to drain the water and start again.
Yeah, they all like doing that. I think there's something like sensory with the warm water, like really.
Absolutely. Yes. So a little bucket for the feet, or letting them play with a bit of warm water with their hands as well. Or for some kids, even pouring a little bit of water over their groin area, making sure it's nice and warm, it's skin temperature, and talking to them, telling them that's what you're going to do. So it's not a shock when you do it.
Yeah. Because it's a new skill for them. Like they've been for such a long time in diapers that don't let them feel basically anything, that they need to understand what's going on. And it's a good idea pouring the water in their crotch area. The next one that I got, And I know that this one is very common to a lot of parents. Do you have any tips on getting my son to poo on the toilet? He will be 5 tomorrow and he won't use it himself. We tried everything. He just would not poop in the toilet.
Yeah, this is probably my number one question and number one reason for referrals. I get a lot of kids, especially boys, I find, that are really good at doing their pees in the toilet. They can stand up to pee in the toilet, but they are not having a bar of sitting down on the toilet. And I do have some girls where this is the case, where they do sit on the toilet to pee, but then when it comes to poop, no, they're not sitting on the toilet. And often these kids will, essentially be continent, like essentially be trained, because they often wear underwear during the day. They might even be dry at night. And when they need to poop, they might request a diaper or go and get one themselves. I've had some kids that will go and put it on themselves, do a poo, get it off themselves, like essentially do most of the changing as well, which is pretty amazing. And when I think about the work involved, like it seems like a harder job to clean yourself up after doing a poo in the diaper rather than the toilet. But it is a really common thing. I really advocate, there's generally something that either has occurred for those kids, either they have experienced some constipation, maybe they fell in the toilet, maybe they had a teacher that made them sit on the toilet for a really long time, or they had a negative experience and that has caused them to have this block almost. They don't want to do their poos in the toilet. And in fact, it goes beyond just not wanting to. They actually physically can't. If our body is really tense, then our little anal sphincter muscles, especially our internal anal sphincter, is more likely to be tight. So we've got two little anal sphincter muscles. We have an internal one and an external one. And this external one is under our voluntary control. So I can think about it and squeeze that muscle. I could do it now. You guys can do it now at home as well if you like, but I'm not going to ask you for feedback. This internal muscle, this is not under our voluntary control. What does that mean? It's a little bit like our heart muscle. So my heart muscle keeps beating. Even if I think about stopping it, it's not going to stop, which is awesome. That keeps me alive. I'm really happy about that. But I don't have direct control over it. I do have some influence. If I was to lay down on the floor and do some meditation, my heart rate would slow down. And if I was to jump up and go for a run, that's highly unlikely, but it could happen, then my heart rate is going to speed up. So I have some influence, but no control. And so this is the same with this little internal anal sphincter. This muscle, we have influence over. So if our bodies and our brains are feeling more relaxed, then this little sphincter is going to be able to relax and let go of the poo. If we're sitting on the toilet and we're a kid, we're not in the right position, we're really stressed, we don't want to be here anyway, and our body and our brain are feeling worried or bothered about it, then this little muscle's not going to let go. And so I've seen it. These kids can sit on the toilet for hours and nothing's coming out, even if we know they need to poo. So we really need to work with the child's nervous system and help them to understand that they are safe and comfortable on the toilet. Now, how do we do that? We go really slowly. We find out what things help that child to feel safe and comfortable in everyday life. Is it a particular blanket? Is it a heat pack? Is it a massage gun? Some kids really like vibration. That sense is really calming for them. Is it calming music? Is it a particular smell like an essential oil or something like that? What can we put in place to help that child feel really safe and comfortable when they're sitting on the toilet? And essentially we want to do no pressure toilet sitting. So when we encourage kids, especially the boys that are standing up to pee, we want them to sit on the toilet as part of their daily routine in a relaxed way. And there's really no expectation anything comes out at first, because the more times they repeat that, the more their body and brain's going to understand that it's not a threatening situation on the toilet. I can allow myself to relax. And then amazingly, those little anal sphincters are going to be able to relax and eventually let the poo out. So it's not I don't have a quick fix for it. I wish I did. I'm always searching and I'll let you know when I find one.
Make sure to patent it.
Yeah, I'll patent it. And then I'm like private island rich, believe me. But The idea is that we really want to support the child to feel safe and calm on the toilet while still allowing them to poo in the pull-up on a regular basis so they don't become constipated.
Okay. And do you consider that using some laxative, whether natural laxative or medicated laxative, can help in this situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So with any child that has constipation, and especially if they're quite impacted, then I do work with lots of wonderful pediatricians and family doctors, and we will recommend laxatives for those kids, actual medication, be that stool softeners or stimulant type laxative. Generally, they are, if we're not experiencing significant constipation, we don't really want to go down the laxative route. There, of course, are some great foods that, like you said, are natural laxatives. So we want to always encourage kids to have a good, varied diet with fruits and vegetables and fibers, seeds, nuts, things like that are going to be really helpful for the bowel. And often we find the more regular and healthy the child's poos are, the more comfortable they feel to be able to let them out on the toilet. A lot of the kids I work with have experienced constipation and have ongoing constipation. And constipation is one of those things that it doesn't always look like what we think it's going to look like. Sometimes constipation can actually look like runny poos, or it might look like doing lots of poos in a day. And this can be really confusing to try and sleuth out what's actually going on. So whilst I don't advocate for the use of laxatives purely if it's a toileting issue, if there is an underlying constipation issue, then we will go down that road.
Okay. So it's more like a last resort rather than...
Yeah, it's like to treat something different. I would never personally recommend giving the kid laxatives and sitting them on toilet for a long period of time. And there's a few reasons. I have heard of it working anecdotally from some parents in terms of the poo actually comes out in the toilet. But then when I dig a bit deeper for those parents and say, well, how did your child react? And are they still pooing on the toilet regularly? And often the answer is no, it was traumatic for everybody involved. And now we have to threaten them with the laxatives again, or we've got to try and bribe them to get on the toilet. Often the underlying cause of the not feeling safe and comfortable in the toilet hasn't necessarily been addressed. And often then I do see these kids coming back with recurrent constipation. They hold on to their poos. They want to avoid doing poos. So ideally I want to work with a child's nervous system rather than against their body.
So basically treating the problem, the core of the problem.
There's so many great foods that we can start off with if we've got mild constipation or if it just looks like it's not quite constipated, but it's heading that way. Once a child is significantly constipated and they've got something like fecal impaction, then absolutely we would consider something like Miralax, because sometimes foods are not going to be enough for that child. But we always want to work with where that child is at. There's never a one-size-fits-all solution for any child or family. And I think that's a really good point in terms of the timing as well. We often think about, okay, when's the child developmentally ready? And some kids mature faster than other kids, of course. Some kids walk earlier than other kids. Yeah. Some kids eat solid food earlier than other kids. And that's okay. But we also think about that child within a family system. And so sometimes the week that you've got relatives staying with you and you've got lots of things going on, or the week that you're going on vacation, or those sort of times might not be the best times to be starting or getting started with potty learning. So it's got to work for the family as well. So sometimes even though the child looks ready to go, I'll tell the families, whoa, you've got a lot coming up in the next week or so. Let's work on getting ourselves really set up, and then we can, once life calms down a little bit, I know it never calms down quite that much, but once we're in one place for a little while, then maybe that's when we pull the ripcord and go.
I definitely relate to that. I remember I told you that I started potty training with my firstborn just like a few weeks before we moved to the United States from France. And we had to pay expensively for that because we had to restart everything.
It's such a stressful time for a family, a big move like that. We both know what it's like to move country. It's not easy.
No. I imagine that it's also like potty training itself. It's something absolutely new for them. So I have another mom who is asking the following. She has a 5-year-old still in diapers. There were some underlying health conditions. And what she says that he shows absolutely no signs of going, no hidden in the corner, like nothing. He has no signs of interest at all. What do I do?
I think this is a wonderful question because I think that a lot of the time we want to really wait for a sign. And for some kids, they give us that sign, right? They, like you said, they hide in the corner, they squat down, they might even start taping the diaper off. You find these wet diapers around the house, all sorts of things. But for some kids, they'll never show any of these signs. And they're quite happy with the status quo. They're quite happy to be in their diaper. They've never known anything else. And especially once a child has experienced 5 years of that, then that seems really normal to them. But the good news is you do not have to wait for any of these signs of readiness as such to be able to get started along that journey. And especially with a child that's maybe experienced some health complications, then your first and foremost goal as a parent is to keep your child healthy and safe. And so it sounds like this mum's done a really good job of that. And now she's even thinking beyond, let's think developmentally and let's get this potty learning happening. So I would say that you don't need to have these classic signs. The two real prerequisites for any sort of potty learning are really having a bowel and a bladder that empty at appropriate intervals, and then also having an appropriately supportive place to be able to do your wheeze and poos. So the toilet or the potty have to be set up well so that your child is going to feel safe and comfortable.
And what are the intervals that you're referring to?
Oh, yeah, the great question. So we want our bowel and bladder to be well and healthy, and we can usually tell that by how often we're doing a wee and poo and what those things look like. So for school-age children, we're looking at about 4 to 7 wees per day is considered normal and healthy. For children under that age, it might be a little bit more. We might see 8 or 9 wees per day because they just have a smaller bladder, so they don't have quite as much space to be able to hold some urine. And then for poos, we have a bit of a range. So anything from once every second day up to 3 times per day is considered normal and healthy. And we're looking for those nice sausage type poos with not too dry, not too hard. If your child eats a lot of fruit, they're little like fruit bat kids, that's all they eat, then their poos might be a little bit softer, but that's the frequency that we're looking for.
Okay.
If you see your child within those ranges, then you can get started. And again, it's thinking about introducing it in a way that is sustainable to have in a routine, knowing that it's probably going to take a little bit longer than 3 days, especially if a child is a little bit older, they've got to 5 or 6 or 7 and they're still using diapers, then that child is probably going to take a little bit of extra time because they're just so used to something. So it has to be sustainable for the parents and those people that are in that child's life. So straight away going to, okay, we're going to set the timer and sit on the toilet every 15 minutes, or that's probably not sustainable more than a couple of days. And so if we don't get it in a couple of days, what are we going to do? We really need a plan. So I generally don't advocate for starting with such an intensive approach. I would say, let's go the other way. Let's just start with 1 or 2 toilet or potty sits per day at a time that's easier to get into the routine. So thinking about bath time or maybe first thing in the morning, especially if kids are dry overnight, they're going to do a big wee in the morning. Yes. You're like, okay, here we go. We can catch this one. We can get some success. Or track their poos. What time do they do a poo? Can we sit them on at poo time? If you catch a poo, that you know what that feels like. It's the best feeling in the world. So even just starting slow, especially if we think this is going to be a bit of a longer journey, then it's a lot more sustainable. Doing a couple of potty sits per day and being able to sustain that for months is going to be more effective than giving it all you've got for 2 days and then packing it in and not being able to do any more of it.
It's true, because it becomes so intense, but at one point we just want to give up, and
you can't get anything done, especially like if you're doing, for a few of my clients, I do recommend an intense approach if I think, they're so ready and we've got lots of those good signs, and if the parents are really dedicated and they have the time and space to be able to do it, then okay, let's put some parameters around it. How long are we going to do this? If the child looks a certain way, if they look like they're just hating their life. Then are we going to cut this? Are we going to do something else? So having a really solid plan, I think, is really the key to success. But for the majority of my kids, I say just let's start small. And that often helps alleviate some parental stress around this as well. This is something that causes parents a lot of stress and a lot of worry. And so if we can give them some small wins and get them started in a way that it doesn't feel like it's ruling their life, then it's more likely the parent's going to feel relaxed about it. And then your child's going to feel relaxed about it as well. Our kids feed off our emotions so much.
They are. They actually mirror us a lot.
Yeah.
So they're like little us in the future.
Yeah.
And another question, because it really resonates to what you just said about like setting the expectations right and also like allowing yourself a little bit of grace. I know that there are lots of methods that would recommend you to stay at home for some time. But I saw some messages from parents who were asking, I need to go somewhere. It can be a park because 4 days in a row with a child peeing on the floor, it can be too much. What do we do in these cases when we go to the park, to the friend's house, to the grandma house, like whatever? What do you suggest for those parents if they are in the bare bottom method? How can they go outside even for like small trips?
Yeah, it's such an important part of our life, and such an important part of a parent's life is being able to change the environment for your child. We know how fractious some children get if they stay in the house for more than a certain amount of time. So absolutely, we have to have solutions. And you know, it's really nice if you do have the ability to have that amount of time to be able to spend at home, but not all families do. Parents have to work and kids have got to go places. So whilst it's very aspirational, and I think if you can carve out that time, it can be so useful. We need to have some contingencies, right? We need to know, what are we going to do? So
we need to see some fresh air.
Yeah, we just need to get out of this house. Absolutely. Preparation is our best friend. Actually, write these things down, get all the materials before we get started. Then it doesn't get to day 3 in the house and everybody's going a little bit stir crazy, and then we're just ending up whacking a diaper back on and leaving the house. What I really advocate for is things like car seat covers, or even just having an old mattress protector or something that you can bring with you. But of course, we have a better solution, and it's your solution, which is so cool. I actually bought them today. I love them so much. I think that the underwear that you make are perfect for this, right? Because you can bring them out and about with you. They're like regular underwear. So it's going to be different feedback to the bare bottom method, because of course when they've got nothing on, then the urine is either moving away from their body or it might be on their body, especially if they have a vulva, they don't have a penis. That's going to be a little bit different. But this is going to give them still that sensory feedback, because of course it's cotton. It's not...
You're my best brand ambassador, actually.
Right? I know, I bring them with me. I love them. And because you can put in, if your kid just needs that little bit of protection, you can just put a really light pad in and it's going to feel like regular underwear. Or if you know your kid is going to flood the moment they get into grandma's house with a nice white carpet, then you can put a really robust, huge pad in, and that's going to actually protect. But they're still going to get that feedback because they've got this beautiful cotton inside, and it's not going to just absorb and wick that moisture away from their skin straight away, but still going to protect grandma's carpet.
No, I'm very grateful for you too. Always.
I'm very grateful for your product. It's made my job easier. So
push forward my product. But given that we started to talk about underwear and diapers, I see lots of parents talking about potty training. And some of them, they were saying, what is the difference to use potty training underwear, whether it's my brand or any other brands, versus using pull-up and collar underwear?
So pull-ups are diapers. They are not potty training underwear. The big pull-up, like
the marketing
is amazing. And actually, I remember when we were talking just now about signs of readiness, there was actually a study funded by Pampers, the diaper brand.
About it, yeah.
The outcome of the study was to encourage parents to wait for signs of readiness, so not get potty training as early. Because if we think about 50, 60, 70 years ago, we didn't have disposable diapers. This is a relatively new invention. And it was all cloth diapers. And that meant a lot of washing. Parents were really motivated to get their kids potty trained because that just meant like one less thing for them to do. And of course, even when we think about like washing machines, they looked really different as well.
It was all like
everything was a lot more manual. We had to do a lot more work back then. And I think the newer style diapers are incredible inventions. I work with some kids that have neurogenic bowel. They've got really complex bowel and bladder health issues going on. And without these products, their skin would be really red and excoriated. They would be a lot less healthy. And so these products really have a place and I'm so glad that they've been invented. But they're just too convenient. And whilst they do say, okay, it has a wet liner, I have never met a child that can tell that their pull-up's wet as soon as they can tell their underwear is wet. If they do a wee in their undies, they know straight away. You get that feedback straight away. But often children won't notice that they're wet in a diaper or a pull-up till it's hanging down around their knees. You see them walking around like little gangsters. You're like, hang on a minute, come here.
And yet they can't really tell.
Absolutely.
Like, oh, nothing there.
Yeah, and that's because the technology is so good. It wicks that moisture away from the skin, which is really protective for the skin. And so for kids that need to be in pull-ups because of a health condition or a particular situation, then they are an amazing solution. But pull-ups will not help you to toilet train your child. Pull-ups are just a different style of diaper, and I think it can be helpful in terms of learning that action of pulling up and down your pants, your underwear. That's what you have to be able to do. But do you know what's also really good at helping you learn to pull up and down your underwear is underwear. Let's just get kids in
directly
underwear.
to,
Absolutely. And that's going to support not only their learning, but also that internal body sense. So understanding what's happening inside my body and their motivation as well. A lot of kids are a lot more motivated to use the toilet if they experience accidents. Not all kids. I've seen some kids that they're wet, they don't care.
What would you advise parents in this case for the kids that don't care? Even if their underwear is wet, they feel it, they don't care. Even if the pee is all over the floor, they don't care.
They're just splashing in the puddle.
Exactly.
They're like
playing
wandering
with
off. Yeah, absolutely. Then it's
What do
really
they do?
coming back to that routine-based learning. They don't have that intrinsic motivation because they think, great, I've got a little water play session now.
Woo-hoo,
That's
that.
fun. Exactly. Then we have to come back to that routine. So those kids are going to most likely learn through a routine. And that's where a time toileting approach can be really useful. And I don't mean we have to set our watch for, it has to be 2 hours on the dot. But if we think about how we use the toilet throughout the day, I'll talk about myself. I wake up and one of the first things I do is I go and do a wee in the toilet, and then probably around, morning tea time, again, I probably need to go maybe after lunch when I've had something to eat, had something to drink. Sometimes if I've been out for a long period of time and I come back home, I might get that urge as well. And especially if I've been out for coffee with friends or having lots of delicious drinks. And then last thing before I go to bed as well, that's one of the last things I do before I go to sleep is I go to the toilet. And so whilst I am going to the toilet in response to my bladder and my rectum talking to me, telling me that I need to go, I still roughly follow this same routine almost every single day. And so some people are scared that time toileting is going to prevent kids from being able to learn to listen to their body cues. But that's just not the case. Often they learn to listen to their body cues through those time toileting times. So it becomes getting to the toilet first thing in the morning, especially if they're dry overnight. Then we can, if they do a big wee, we can talk about how that feels before, how that feels after, and start to develop that sense of, we call it interoceptive awareness, understanding what your body's trying to tell you, what it needs. And so going back to that routine-based learning can be really useful for those kids.
And then we become moms and we go to the toilet when we just need to hide from our kids.
Yeah. But it doesn't work because they come in and try and find
come
you.
with you.
Mom, are
time.
you doing a poo?
I wanted to touch base on what you said before regarding the Pampers founded the research is. I've also heard about it. And what I see now, because I'm starting to deep dive into all this nighttime training, I see on the forums parents asking questions. I would love to start nighttime training because my son or my daughter have been dry for maybe like few weeks and they're fully potty trained since several months, and I feel that it's a time to completely remove the diaper, start to night train. And lots of answers are there is no such a concept as nighttime training. They will outgrow it at one point. Even if they wet the bed until 7, it's fine because everything is hormonal. As a mom, I don't believe in that, not because of the underwear that I invented, but because what I saw with my kids, and especially what I saw with my daughter, when by feeling the wetness, she could handle the nighttime dryness in the matter of a month because she could do this connection, and also from what I see with my clients. But what is your conception on that? Because maybe you have different vision, and how much hormonal nighttime training is really impacting kids' capacity to hold the bladder through the night.
Yeah, nighttime is something that I work on with a lot of my kids, and a lot of parents come to me and want to start nighttime training or work on that nighttime dryness. And what we spend the vast majority of our time talking about is actually all the things that the child is doing during the day. I try and explain this well to families because otherwise I get halfway through the call or halfway through the visit and they're like, hang on, we've only spoken about daytime. We don't have a problem during the day. We want to do it at night. Yeah. But really a lot of nighttime dryness is impacted by the choices and the things that we do throughout the day. So there's a few key things for nighttime dryness. There is a huge hormonal component. Absolutely. We have a hormonal system, a particular hormone, vasopressin, that's like our anti-go-to-the-toilet hormone. It slows down our urine production overnight so that we don't have to go to the toilet as often at nighttime. And this is, of course, a really important component, but it's only one part of the puzzle. There's also arousability, so that connection, again, that interoception between the bladder and the brain, so how well when the bladder expands and stretches, how clear those messages are coming up to the brain. And for a lot of us that are continent at night, if we really need to go, that sensation will wake us up and then we can make a decision. We can get up out of bed and get ourselves to the toilet. So there's the hormonal issue, there's an arousability issue, that body-brain connection. There's a bit of motivation as well. I work with some kids that'll tell me point blank, oh yeah, I feel the need. It wakes me up. I just roll over and go right back to sleep. Because number one, maybe they're still in a diaper. They're like, do you know what? The diaper is there for a reason. Why would I put one on otherwise? You can't flaw their logic. Like these kids have got it. Or they don't want to get up because they're scared of the dark. They've been told don't get up in the middle of the night. Maybe it's cold, not necessarily where we live, but a lot of places at the moment it's really cold. And so the idea of getting up to go to the toilet is just abhorrent to them. So there's a lot of
relate, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. We've had a little cold snap recently and I didn't enjoy it at all. But I'm not going to complain about it because I know it's actually not that bad. So there's all of these different aspects of wetting. And then there's a really important one, which is our bladder capacity. So if we have a little teeny tiny bladder, then we can only hold a small amount of urine. So we will have to do more wheeze because our bladder is constantly filling up. Our kidneys are constantly filtering our blood, getting rid of all that waste product that our body doesn't need and pushing that into our bladder. And if we have a teeny tiny bladder, we need to go to the toilet a lot. If we have a nice big bladder, then we can hold our wheeze for a longer period of time. It's just like having a bigger cup. You can get more fluid in there. So a lot of the kids I work with don't drink enough fluid during the day. So they will drink maybe a little bit with breakfast or morning tea, or maybe have a few sips at lunch. And then by the time they come home from school or in the afternoon or around dinner time, suddenly they're really thirsty. So they guzzle down all of this fluid, and that fluid has to go somewhere. And so it comes out at night. So a huge thing that I talk to my families about is actually getting more fluid in the earlier part of the day. I don't necessarily advocate restricting fluids at night, because what I find is people kind of get really hung up on that rule and say, okay, you can't have any drinks an hour before bedtime. and then the child just hasn't drunk enough all day. And our bladder is so many other parts of our body. If we don't use it, we lose it, and that means our capacity. So if we don't drink much during the day, then our bladder stays really small. There's a muscle around our bladder, and like all of our muscles, we need to move it and we need to stretch it in order for it to get longer and bigger. So our detrusor muscle, if we are not drinking a lot regularly, then our detrusor muscle stays really contracted and keeps our bladder really small. And that means that we can't hold as much wee overnight, and we're more likely to need to go to the toilet at nighttime. So for children, I don't start advocating for interventions at night for night wetting until they get to age 5. By 5, bladder and bowel should be mature enough to be not having accidents. For the majority of kids, of course, there's always kids that are going to be outside the norm. But that doesn't mean I don't start working on night wetting before the age of 5. So when I talk about the age of 5, I'm talking about if we're going to use a medication, so that could, if we do think the child has a disrupted hormonal system, then we might recommend that they take a medication for that, which will help them to become dry at night, or we do something like a mat alarm system, pants alarm system. So when they wee, a big sound wakes them up, and then hopefully they can get to the toilet and start and do the rest of their wee in the toilet. But for a lot of kids actually become dry at night much before 5. And so if we have a child that is motivated, that doesn't want to be wearing diapers, or if we have a child that we think, yeah, actually you've had toileting down during the day for a good while now, then there's no harm in doing a little trial in underwear at nighttime. And you can pad up your bed and put double do the mattress protectors and do just a little 2-week trial. I know that sounds like a lot, because it is a lot. It's not a little 2-week trial. It's a 2-week trial, and see what happens. Because you're right, like you said, for your daughter, for some kids, that feeling of wetness will be enough to either motivate them to get up and go to the toilet next time, or start to improve that connection between their bladder and their brain.
And I imagine also the bladder itself to become bigger.
Absolutely.
And more contained.
Exactly. So if we can encourage kids to drink more throughout the day, so thinking about having a big drink at breakfast time, another big drink at morning tea time, maybe a big drink before and after lunch, eating lunch and going out and playing with your friends at school or whatever you're doing that day, a big drink at afternoon tea and a big drink at dinner, then your child is not going to be really thirsty by the time they get to bed. Usually kids, they're saying they're really thirsty by the time they get to bed. If your child is really thirsty and is really having a lot of fluid, you should definitely take them to the doctor and get a check for diabetes, because obviously that's very serious, and excessive thirst can be one of the symptoms. But for the vast majority of kids, it's just that's the first time they've really stopped throughout their day. Kids are really busy, and that's when they've noticed, oh, I'm really thirsty because I've been running around all day and I haven't really had any fluid. We're very good at carrying our water bottles with us, but sometimes we're not very good at drinking.
Sometimes it's also the way to stay a little bit more with parents. You know, this last drink that lasts for 5-10 minutes while they're sipping their cup.
Yeah, exactly. I need a drink. I need to go to the toilet. It's too hot. I need a snack. I need another story. These are all great delay techniques for going to bed. But if we keep our kids really hydrated during the day, then hopefully we can eliminate one of those reasons.
I have a question. Is the potty training different for boys or girls?
Oh.
What is your experience with both?
It does go a little bit differently. I generally find that initially girls tend to pick it up a little bit quicker, which is like so many developmental skills. So many developmental skills, like especially at those younger ages. And you think about like social development, you think about fine motor development. Generally, girls pick those things up a lot quicker. And toileting is a lot of fine motor. It's managing clothes, it's using your hands, it's using your pelvic floor, which is actually fine motor as well. And sometimes some of that social stuff comes into it as well. Sometimes they're a little bit more motivated to work for being a bit more grown up. But I find that sometimes boys tend to have a bit more fun with it. Like I can usually bring them around a little bit easier with the poo chat and talking about bums and all that sort of stuff. They tend to enjoy that a little bit more. The majority of my clients are male or little people with a penis. I would say it's probably about a 70-30 split.
Oh, wow.
And definitely that is the same in the literature. Boys generally struggle with toileting more. I think that, there's developmental things going on there. I think one of the biggest things as well is sitting versus standing to wee. And if you don't remember anything else, just remember this. It's much better to initially help your little boy child, person with a penis to sit to pee. Sometimes, he's going to pee over the top, and there's solutions to that. You could get a little pee guard or teach him to point his penis down. But often what I see is once boys learn to stand to pee, it's a great skill, by the way. Later on, we can definitely introduce it. But initially, they get so excited that they can spend less time on this. They can rush up, quickly do a wee, rush back. And what happens is they just forget to sit to poo a lot of the time, or they don't give their body the opportunity. And then often they get constipated, and then they have a hard, painful poo. And then they decide, oh, poos are bad and the toilet's bad and I'm never going to sit on that. And it generally becomes more of an issue for them. So when I think about the actual question, if I answer the question instead of getting on my soapbox, I would say let's try and keep it as similar as possible for boys and girls. Let's try and make everybody sit to pee. It's also better for emptying our bladder more effectively. When you're standing, you're using more of your postural muscles, your pelvic floor is a little bit more switched on. And so that means that it's harder to push the wee out effectively. And if you've got leftover wees in your bladder, that can be risk factors for urinary tract infections and those sort of things. And of course, having a penis is a really protective factor for a urinary tract infection because your urethra, that tube that connects your bladder to the outside world, is just longer. So it's less likely bacteria are going to swim up there and colonize your bladder. But of course, with our little girls, our little people with a vulva, then your anus and your urethral opening are really close together, and so that's why they can often get more urinary tract infections. It's usually an E. coli bacteria that colonizes, and it can be such an awful thing as well. It's so painful and uncomfortable. So I encourage very similar approaches for both boys and girls, but with the big caveat that if, of course, you know your child really well, parents always do, if you know something that's really going to make them tick or something that's really exciting for them, then use that to your best ability to get them motivated and excited for it.
Which I completely relate. No, it's very funny in my experience. This is exactly what happened. It was much easier for me with my girl than with my boy, my firstborn, because I think she just grasped it much quicker. But my boy is the firstborn, so it was also like we didn't know what to do. We were lost. Versus when she started potty training, we already knew what's going on. But it's interesting that the ratio is like 70-30.
Yeah,
Not in that.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting split.
Yeah.
But we do still see, obviously, lots of girls that come to us. And the way that I would work with them, always in a person-centered way, I always want to think about what's going to help motivate that child, what's going to help that child feel safe and comfortable. And for a lot of kids, those things are going to be a little bit similar. If the child is young, sometimes there'll be some difference in preferences as to what they want to do. Girls do tend towards some more like fine motor activities. They just develop those skills quicker. They're better at them earlier on in general. And boys will gravitate towards more gross motor activities, which can also make sitting on the toilet hard because that's a sedentary activity. We're not moving around so much. But how can we introduce movement to a toilet sit? Can we give them something to play with on the toilet? Can we give them a rubber stretchy band to hopefully not fling their brother in the head with it or something, but something that's going to provide a bit of movement and a bit of feedback for them and make that sitting possible and enjoyable even.
That's what I was going to say. Like, how can you fight when you're in the bathrooms at 5? They don't want to sit on the toilet.
Yeah, actually, Nerf guns have been like a real great one. I have lots of parents that do, Nerf wars with their children whilst they're sitting on the toilet, or they just have
They're on the toilet.
Yeah, just a bit of an open slather. Like you can open fire at dad with your little Nerf gun whilst you're sitting on the toilet, but that's the only time you're allowed to while dad's unarmed. And that's actually been really effective for a lot of kids. It's really fun.
It is a funny tip. I think we are running out of time, so we will end up on this very great advice for a very great feedback regarding the Nerf guns on the bathroom for the boys. Thank you, everyone who was with us during this live. Don't hesitate to join for our next month live and share this information if you know someone who might be struggling with potty training. We will be always happy to discuss these cases, and also send us messages to me or to Tabi. I will tag her in the video, so you can send us a message and see how we can help you in your potty training journey.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.